with the school programs to pass a law in the state of Ceará to protect the schools from school food, from the ultra-processed food. And we had a Congress on that, so it's important to protect children. They are very vulnerable uh, regarding that kind of food. And something I took from the Secretary's speech is that there are contemporaneous challenges. We were talking about the bets, the social media and the ultra processed food, how they use algorithms, how is that food that makes them have a compulsion to eat that food, to look, check social media. So it's we need information to that. That's why I value the work of the researcher, the work of you all, the academia, civil society, the government. Also, we have to help the government to strengthen their ability to have policies to protect people, protect children, and this will cost more and more in time. Like tobacco, if we approach that problem now, we are going to avoid the healthcare units to have an overload further on. So tackling, facing the industry and supporting the government are two very important things to protect children. And let's see what's going to happen today at the Congress, and it's very important to you. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for the contribution. I thank the researchers. Very well. Thank you reminding that the more recent report from UNICEF highlights that obesity is a more serious problem than malnutrition in the world, and this approaches the importance of the work facing the ultra processed food. Do we have another question? Well, I won't ask a question, I'll do a provocation. I just want to tell you something before. I work with New Paints for a little over 10 years. Because of that work, I began talking in many medic congresses, cardiology, pediatric, and among other medic events, scientific events. And something pretty interesting is that every time people talk about cooking, they say because the cooking abilities, because the importance of preparation, because the classification of food, but people aren't able to say cook. It looks like it's a minor, least important thing. So the fact of me being here in other places talks a lot about the relevance of valuing cooking, valuing the kitchen, not like a housewife place, but a place of everyone's home. And the question I'll ask has to do with that and the provocation, because I think nobody has this. This is a ready answer for that. The series reinforces that cooking and eating real food are essential for health, right? So, in practice, what can the governments do to make the kitchen a possible place in people's daily lives and not a privilege?
I want to see who starts.
I'll try to answer to this good provocation, and not under all aspects that we could comment regarding the topic, which is very broad. So having the privilege of cooking and eating real food at home, or at least having spaces to eat real food, imply to substantial change in our development models. But one of the important aspects that we have to talk about in the whole of society is the process of education since tender age, so we stop being nutritional illiterates. Most of us, maybe not here, but most of societies, including myself, are or were nutritional illiterates. That is to say, we didn't know how we should choose our food for our specific needs and for our families. We don't know how to read when we take a tag of a processed or ultra processed food. We don't know what's there. It's hard to understand what is there. So, since children, we must stop being nutritional illiterates, and that will improve very much when we are adults. First, in looking for proper food for our family. Second, looking for ourselves, looking for proper food for ourselves, and have work habits, hours habits that can allow us to have a healthy nutrition. If we're not convinced of that, and if we can't use that knowledge for better nutrition, it'll be hard that even changing hours, distances, price of food, we we eat proper food. It's very complex because time, hours, prices. Now there is an interesting side in what you said, which is very paradoxical, because at the same time, let's say our grandparents didn't have that nutritional culture of knowing about the nutrition. Food was very good. And I think what the classification tells us is that the problem are not the people but the food systems. It became hard to choose because there are too many ultra processed food. I'll tell you a story in less than 10 seconds. And that is the following. I have a friend that told me one day, why do you mention this ultra processed things so much? I don't know anyone who eats ultra processed food. And I said, Judah, and I was in her house on the weekend, and then cut back on breakfast, and can imagine uh, bread, white bread, chocolate, drinks. And I said, take a look at the list of ingredients just from this bread to begin with. I said, I can't believe it. I'm eating ultra processed food. So people don't even know how much ultra processed food they're eating. So it's a very strong paradox. You're touching a very important point, which is communication. So we must communicate effectively, something the secretary mentioned. We must broadcast, publicize with the managers, with the population, and how to translate that evidence into something we can understand. But I'd like to bring an element. I think we have a lot to value, not only the act of cooking, but the act of eating together. It's a space of connection. I think food has this affection space that we end up losing when we talk about standards. It's not only the standard of what we eat, but how we eat, where we eat, with who we eat, how much time we dedicate to that. I'm a mother. I have small children, and it's a space of meeting with my children, my husband. It's a family meeting time. So it's a concept we must bring with us, that food connects, and mental health has to do with that. So to value that connection space is very important. And your question said, what can the governments do, is a very complex question. I think there are many public policy solutions, the issue of accessibility, the issue of being economically accessible, physically accessible. And there are other public policies that were mentioned today, Bolsa Familia, an aid program, and then there's a ministry policy to contribute the spaces to recover moments, allowing not only to cook, but to recover the connection, because we're not nourishing only the body, we're nourishing the soul. Food nourishes much more than the body, it goes beyond the nutrients. It feeds relationships, feeds our culture, and so forth. I just want to make a comment regarding the issue of the food culture, respect for culture. We have of access to food, and the cultural issue also related. We have a project called Beyond Cotton, where we work on 3 African countries, and the issue of how it's important to have access to food and how the families began having access and began cooking, but oftentimes not without knowing, I have access to that food, but well, I how do I do? What practice can I use? How can I use this food the best way? Because oftentimes it's there, they produce that, but they are not using it in the way they don't have that. Not even the uh, cooking practice. It's even will sometimes something's lacking to talk about the climate issue. What is the energy source we'll use for that food to prepare that food? For example, it's oftentimes in African schools they use women are there cooking, but cooking uh, with fire from wood. So these issues must be taken into consideration when we think on public policies. Elisa mentioned here, we must remember the Brazilian experience with solidarity kitchens and all, and other issues. For example, the school feeding program with its nutrition and feeding education programs. Taking these children to these spaces is also important. So to take piggyback on the gender issue, that is absolutely core, goes by the replacement going towards a series of ultra-processed food placed in the world as something practical, especially for women. And I'll mention the devaluation of cooking and planting, the devaluation of the ones planting real food. The main indicator is that if you look towards the difficulty of survival of a farmer, of a agriculture versus a millionaire's $1 million salary of a CEO of a corporation that is killing us. It's not the food system that is sick. Today is a symbolic day for this series because 4051 a bill of law will be voted today to 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm seeing thumbs up. Yes, and I think it's very symbolic. It would be the first time that a bill of law, it's not a uh, final vote, but it's important to go by a commission and to have an approval by a Senate commission will be beautiful. Approval of such a bill. And another one, the selective taxation for sodas in Ceará. So if you go meet Paulo Benevides, and because selective tax is far from being one, selective tax for sodas, Mauro Benevides is the rapporteur for a bill of law. And there was a limitation of 2% for that tax, meaning in practice, soda will pay less tax than this pen because of the benefits in the Manaus taxation benefit law. We wanted a minimum 8% tax, but they're placing 2%. I think it's a scandal to go by that situation in Brazil, and it's in the hands of Mauro Benavides. Call his pets veterinarian or whatever. He's the rapporteur of this. It's in his hands. For me, cooking, I think, comes into contact with your human ambition.
It's like lighting a fire. It's an activity that's seasoning the foods, and it's the best way, and it's the best time for us during the day, and we can change this. In Brazil, we have to congratulate Brazil for this, for everything that you've been doing. The healthy schools, right? Law. How you're promoting nutritional and food education in schools. The promotion also of the fairer food systems, especially for vulnerable populations. Yesterday at UNICEF, we had a tool workshop on this, on the indigenous food systems. and how the grandparents help in, especially in the basic group of foods, and also in the food staples, especially in the countries of the region. I'm very happy to be here, as I mentioned before, with such intellectual communication powerhouses. Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you, everyone. Ana, it's with you. We're going to finalize the event and wait here. Considering the time, we're just going to open the floor for two interventions of the government that are really committed to this agenda and that will be able to say a few words before we finalize here this launch. First, Kelly Alves, the General Coordinator of Food and Nutrition of the Ministry of Health. You want to come here? You want to speak? Thank you, everyone here who is in person and here online as well, all of the partners who had helped us hold this event. And I would like to remind you that our support for this event is part of the commitment of the Ministry of Health in Brazil of production of knowledge and the dissemination of knowledge to subsidize or to help our public policies in health and also in food, nutrition, environment. The surveys of the population and our systems of information and the Ministry of Health in the 35 years of SUS has supported many Brazilian researchers so that our country would be an international reference in the area of scientific research in food and nutrition and other areas of the health. So we do celebrate the names of the Brazilian researchers that are in the list of so much impact, especially in the Lancet series, as a result of the investments of our SUS, our Health Unified System, in funding public research that has no conflict of interests. And in the area of facing the serious epidemic of obesity, of consumption of ultra-processed foods by the Brazilian population, I'd like to highlight the choice of the Ministry of Health of the food guide and in the revision to base the recommendation based on food patterns and not specific food products. So it's very important for us to translate or interpret these guidelines of the food guide of using the words of prefer and not avoid, and not overvaluing specific nutrients, which is the narrative of the food industry, especially to foster the consumption of processed foods. And I'd like to highlight what Paulo Jones mentioned about two regulatory measures that we need, especially the public support, and the Ministry of Health has supporting, which is the Bill 4501 from the Congressman Jacques Wagner, to especially in the schools. The PNI is a major advancement for the basic education system, but we also have private schools that also need protection. And our fight for the selective tax to be put on the price and to get good results as other countries have in the reduction of sugary drinks. And we are continue working with the Ministry of Employment and Work and the Ministry of Finance and Planning as well. We keep working in building the narrative of the nutrition program for the workers, PACHI, that works with millions of workers and with hundreds of companies in Brazil, also to provide these recommendations for the Brazilian population. Even though 80% of the companies that are part of the PACHI, they adopt the the mechanism of food stamps or for food workers, and we cannot we cannot forget these companies in this regulation as well. We need the commitment of these companies in order to promote environmental food systems for the within the companies. And our proposal that is being drafted and discussed between many different ministries, we want to not just talk about the regulation on the production and of the meals and the companies that still have the food vouchers, that provide the food vouchers, and also, but the companies that have this option, they should be committed to environmental, to healthy environments for food. And I thank you once again for the opportunity, and I hope that the Lancet series will be an inspiration for debates in Brazil and also in the states and the municipalities. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. And now Silvio Porto from the Direction of Agricultural Policies of CONAB. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone here. And dear Patricia, I'd like to thank you so much for the invitation and congratulate everyone here present. It is a very good debate, especially in such a deep debate in agri-food systems. Here, with who are in the government, it's not an easy process, but we are really resilient, right, Patricia? So, taking baby steps, we can say that we got here thanks to the decision of President Lula in 2003 to reestablish Conceia. It was within this space for a dialogue and public pressure that could be exerted. That's why we arrived here. All of the main achievements in the food and food in schools, and also, and especially in the semi-arid region and other programs as well, it was all due to this discussion that we had in the SEAD. The social participation process is fundamental. Without it, we won't be able to move forward, especially with our current National Congress. And now, to finalize here, I'd like just to talk about 3 points. When discussing food systems, we have to look at the land system of Brazil. The land reform and agrarian reform is still a crucial aspect. We have to resume the debate of the land reform, that we have a serious problem of land concentration. 1% of rural establishments in Brazil concentrate 50% of the production in the country. That is not possible, and we cannot have democracy if we continue with this land concentration. At the same time, just 10 companies, supermarket companies, are responsible for more than 40% of what is consumed in this country. The 100 biggest companies, supermarkets in Brazil, represent 86% of what we consume in the country. If we do not change this, we need a mechanism to control these corporations. Carrefour just bought Walmart operation. The 650 billion reais that was the gross revenue last year, 120 came from Carrefour. The third biggest supermarket company is from Maranhão. So these are significant changes that are happening in Brazil. Sometimes you do not realize it, the models between retail and bulk selling together, and in the consumption of the ultra-processed product. So the connection between the debate and with health and agricultural aspects, that is essential, of the utmost importance. And that was a space of debate, especially that we needed to have to make the connection between city and the farming areas. Especially in the next point is to think of the expanding the participation of the traditional communities and the delimitation of the lands, the deed properties of the quilombolas and the land reform, and also the small farming. We need to change the sanitary legislation in the country. This is one of the biggest hurdles for food, healthy food, to go into the table of Brazilians. And to do this by having a national program, considering the national policy for food supply, Conseil was fundamental in this work. And Vanessa Schatz is recovering and from a problem, a health problem, and she had a major role talking to the many different ministries within the Conseil. That is essential for us to advance. And the sanitary issue is one of the main problems that we have nowadays. And considering the pesticides as well. Remember everything that Professor Monteiro said. We also, the xenobiotics are basically pesticides, and they are in our bodies, they are in the environment, and within COP30, when we were discussing seriously the paths for the alternative paths for climate change, the Ministry of Agriculture accepted 30 new types of pesticides or agricultural defensives in the country. PRONAI is the national program for the reduction of pesticides, and we have to make it possible here and considering the ultra process together with this issue. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And to finalize, we'd like to thank the organizing institutions and the researchers that were authors of the series, the teams involved, and the public here presence. It was financed by Bloomberg Dynis, and all of the articles here are projected in this one here in this screen. May it contribute to the health public policies based on evidence in Brazil and Latin America. We wish you a great day.